Picture this. It's August 20th, 1966. Niterói, Brazil. A hot, humid Sunday afternoon. A young girl is flying her kite on Vintum Hill, a steep, unremarkable hill on the outskirts of the city. The kind of place kids go when they want to be left alone. The view is nice. The wind is good. Nothing ever happens here. Except today. Because today, lying in the tall grass near the top of the hill, she finds two men. They're dressed in suits. Formal, tailored suits, not hiking clothes, not casual wear, suits. Like they were going to a business meeting. They're lying on their backs. Perfectly still. Eyes closed. She thinks they're sleeping. They are not sleeping. The men are dead. And what investigators find over the next few days will become one of the most bizarre, most haunting, and most completely unsolved mysteries in Brazilian history, and honestly, in the entire history of unexplained deaths worldwide. This is the story of the lead masks case. And I promise you, by the time we're done here, you will not have answers. Nobody does. But you will have questions that will stick with you for a very long time. Welcome back. Let's get into it. Let's set the scene properly, because the details here matter. Vintum Hill. August 20th, 1966. It's a Saturday afternoon, correction, it's a Sunday. The kind of day in Brazil where the heat is heavy and the air smells like dust and sea salt. The girl who finds the bodies is young, accounts vary on her exact age, but she's a child, and she's alone. She sees the two men in the grass and, understandably terrified, she runs home and tells her family. By the time police arrive, it's getting dark. Investigators make note of the scene. Two men. Both wearing formal suits and raincoats, despite the heat. Both lying on their backs, side by side, very neatly. Almost composed, like someone arranged them. Beside them. One empty water bottle. One small packet, the kind you might wrap a sandwich in, though it contained no food. Two towels. And, this is the part that stops everyone in their tracks, two lead masks. Not Halloween masks. Not theater props. Handmade masks, fashioned from sheets of lead, cut and shaped to cover the eyes and upper face. No holes for the eyes. No way to see through them. Just flat, heavy pieces of lead, shaped to fit a human face. They were wearing these when they died. Or, more accurately, they had the masks nearby, and the evidence suggests they put them on at some point. The bodies are photographed. The scene is documented. And then investigators begin trying to figure out who these men were. It doesn't take long. Both men were well known in their local community in Campos dos Goitacazes, a city about 300 kilometers from Niterói. The first man was Manuel Pereira de Cruz. He was 34 years old. An electronics technician. He had a wife. He had children. The second man was Miguel José Viana. He was 32 years old. Also an electronics technician. Also had a family. Also well-liked, well-regarded, with no history of mental illness, no history of drug use, no known enemies. Both men had left home the previous Thursday, August 17th, telling their families they were going to purchase some materials for work in São Paulo. A completely normal explanation. Nothing alarming. The families weren't worried. They were supposed to be back in a few days. They never came back. And now they're here, on top of Vintum Hill, dead, with lead masks near their faces, and nobody, not their families, not their co-workers, not the police, nobody has any idea what happened. Okay, so investigators have two dead men. The first question in any suspicious death investigation is, how did they die? And this is where the case immediately becomes strange. Because the answer is, we don't know. The autopsies are performed. And here's what they find, or rather, what they don't find. No signs of physical trauma. No bruising. No wounds. No evidence of a fight or an attack. Nobody hit these men. Nobody stabbed them. Nobody shot them. No signs of poisoning in the standard toxicology screens. The bodies show no classic markers of common poisons. No cyanide. No arsenic. Nothing that would immediately explain a sudden death. No signs of heart attack or stroke. Both men were young and appeared to be in reasonably good health. The cause of death is officially listed as undetermined. Now, to be fair, and this is something that gets overlooked in a lot of retellings, Brazilian forensic science in 1966 was not what it is today. The toxicology capabilities were limited. There were entire categories of substances that simply couldn't be detected with the tools available at the time. So the "no poison found" conclusion has a significant caveat. It means no common poison was found using 1960s methods. It doesn't mean no poison was present. But we'll come back to that. The investigators now focus on the timeline. Where were these men between Thursday, August 17th, when they left home, and Sunday, August 20th, when they were found dead? Witnesses emerge. A bar owner in Niterói remembers seeing the two men on the afternoon of August 19th, the day before they were found. They came into his bar. They seemed normal, not distressed, not acting strangely. They bought water. Just water. And a notebook. This is important, they bought a notebook. And on that notepad, or in a notebook found at the scene, accounts differ slightly, investigators find the note. And this is the moment the case goes from strange unexplained death to something else entirely. The note reads, and I'm translating from Portuguese here. 16:30, be at the agreed location. 18:30, take the capsule. After the effect begins, put on the protective masks. Wait for the signal. Different translations vary slightly, but that is the core of it. Be somewhere at a specific time. Take a capsule. Once the effect starts, once something begins happening to your body, put on the lead masks. Wait for the signal. The note ends there. Let that sink in for a moment. These two men had a plan. They were following instructions. Step by step, methodically, they were executing some kind of procedure that they believed required them to take an unknown substance, a capsule, and then wear lead masks over their faces. And then wait for a signal. A signal that, as far as anyone can tell, never came. Or maybe it did come, and they just couldn't respond to it anymore. Now investigators are asking different questions. Who wrote the note? What was in the capsule? What was the signal? What were the masks supposed to protect them from, or were they not protective equipment at all? Were they something else entirely? And most importantly, did someone else know they were going to be on that hill? To understand what might have happened on Vintim Hill, we need to understand who Manuel and Miguel actually were. Not just their jobs and their families, but their inner lives. Their beliefs. Their obsessions. And this is where the case gets a new dimension. Both men were deeply, seriously interested in the paranormal. Specifically, they were part of a community of enthusiasts in Brazil, and Brazil in the 1960s had a very active paranormal community, who believed in communication with extraterrestrial intelligence. Now, I want to be careful here, because it's easy to write these men off as cranks or eccentrics. They were not. They were intelligent, technically trained professionals. Electronics technicians. They understood circuits, frequencies, signal theory. And they applied that technical mindset to what they believed was a very real phenomenon, contact with beings from other worlds. In certain Brazilian esoteric and spiritualist communities of that era, there was a specific belief, well documented in the literature of the time, that extraterrestrial contact could be facilitated through electronic means. Through the right equipment, tuned to the right frequency, at the right time and place. That it was essentially a technological problem, not a mystical one. And some people within this community believed that the contact, when it came, would be physical. Not just radio signals. Not just visions. Actual presence. Actual meeting. Manuel and Miguel, according to people who knew them well, were believers. Not casual believers, serious, devoted, organized believers. They attended meetings. They discussed theories. They made plans. And the lead masks. Within this community, lead was believed to have specific properties. Some adherents held that lead could shield the human nervous system, or the human mind, from certain overwhelming energies or frequencies that might accompany extraterrestrial contact. Not radiation in the scientific sense, but something more like spiritual or electromagnetic interference that an unprotected human couldn't survive. The masks, in other words, may have been perceived as safety equipment. Protective gear for an experience so intense that it could damage an unshielded person. Does that mean they actually work that way? No. Of course not. But it means these men weren't doing something random. They were following a protocol. A protocol they believed in completely. Which raises a deeply uncomfortable question: who gave them this protocol? Because Manuel and Miguel didn't invent the lead masks idea in isolation. This was part of a larger network of belief. And that network had specific doctrines, specific claims about what would happen, specific instructions for how to prepare. Someone, or something, told these two men that if they went to Vinton Hill on August 20, 1966, at 4:30 in the afternoon, something was going to happen. Something worth preparing for. Something worth dying for. The investigation into their social circle reveals meetings with other like-minded people. References to correspondence, letters received, letters sent. Evidence that Manuel and Miguel had been planning this for some time. This wasn't impulsive. This was organized. But when investigators try to trace the network further, to find out who else was involved, who gave the instructions, whether this was some kind of cult or organized group with a leader, they hit walls. People stop talking. Records don't exist. The community closes itself off. The question of who else was there, or who was supposed to be there, remains open. Let's go through the major theories, one by one. And I want to give each one a fair hearing, because the honest truth is that none of them perfectly explain everything. Theory 1, accidental death from an unknown substance. This is probably the most likely explanation, in terms of pure probability. And here's the logic. The note mentions taking a capsule. A capsule that would have some kind of effect. An effect intense enough to require the lead masks afterward. What was in that capsule? We don't know. But there are real substances, in 1966, accessible to people who knew where to look, that could cause an experience intense enough that someone might believe it was genuine altered consciousness, or contact with another plane of existence, or preparation for extraterrestrial communication. There are also substances, some of them found in nature, some of them synthetic, that can kill. Especially if the dose is wrong. Especially if the person taking them has an underlying vulnerability they weren't aware of. The scenario, under this theory, goes like this: Manuel and Miguel took a substance, something they had been given or had obtained, as part of their protocol. The substance was either toxic, or the dose was too high, or they had a reaction to it. They put on the masks, as instructed, as the effects began. And then, perhaps quickly, perhaps over the course of an hour or two, they lost consciousness and died. The appeal of this theory is that it doesn't require anything beyond the ordinary. No foul play. No outside killer. Just two men who believed in something, took something they shouldn't have, and died on a hilltop in Brazil. The problem with this theory is that the specific toxin was never identified. And while 1960s forensic capabilities were limited, the bodies were not in terrible condition when found. A skilled modern forensic pathologist might be able to look at the tissue samples, if they still exist, and find something. No such analysis has been conclusively done. Theory 2, deliberate poisoning by a third party. What if someone gave these men the capsule? What if someone told them it was something else, something safe or even beneficial, and it was actually poison? This would make the case a murder. A clever, premeditated, untraceable murder. Think about it, if you wanted to kill two people and make it look like an accident or a mysterious natural death, what better way than to give them a substance wrapped in a belief system they already held? Tell them the capsule is preparation for contact. Tell them the masks are protective. Have them go somewhere remote, take the substance voluntarily, and wait. You don't even have to be there. Who would do this, and why? Theories range from a rival within the paranormal community, to someone who wanted to silence them about something they knew, to something more sinister involving experimental substances and unwitting test subjects. This theory is darker, but it's not impossible. The deliberate and planned nature of the event, the specific time, the specific location, the specific protocol, suggests someone was in control. Whether those instructions came from a sincere, if misguided, spiritual leader, or from someone with murderous intent, is impossible to know. Theory 3, the extraterrestrial theory. I want to address this directly and honestly, because it comes up every time this case is discussed. Some people believe that what happened on Vinton Hill was exactly what Manol and Miguel believed was going to happen, contact with non-human intelligence. That they successfully made contact. That the signal came. That the capsule opened them to an experience so overwhelming that their bodies couldn't survive it. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I will say, there is no physical evidence that anything unusual happened on that hill. No unusual radiation. No electromagnetic anomalies. No marks on the ground. No witnesses to anything beyond two men lying in the grass. What I will say, and I think this is worth saying seriously, is that the men believed this was possible. Not as a metaphor, not as a game, but as a real and imminent event. And that belief shaped their actions completely. Whether the source of that belief was true or false or somewhere in between is a question that goes far beyond this particular case. Theory 4. Spiritual or occult ritual. Some researchers situate this not in the UFO/extraterrestrial context specifically, but in a broader tradition of Brazilian spiritualism, which is genuinely rich and complex and deeply embedded in the culture. The idea here is that Manol and Miguel were attempting some kind of ritual opening, a deliberate attempt to cross a threshold between the ordinary world and something beyond it. And that they succeeded, in a way, and it killed them. This theory and Theory 1 overlap significantly. The substance, the masks, the timing, the isolation, all of these fit a ritual framework. What distinguishes the ritual framing from the extraterrestrial framing is mostly about vocabulary and cosmology. Both take seriously the idea that Manol and Miguel knew exactly what they were doing. Theory 5, Cult involvement and possible sacrifice. This is the darkest theory, and I want to be clear that there is no direct evidence for it. But it has been raised, so I'll address it. Some people believe that Manol and Miguel were members of a group, a cult or a tightly organized secret society, and that their deaths were not accidental but ritualized. That they were, in some sense, offered up. Whether they volunteered for this, or were manipulated into it, is part of the question. The evidence that's sometimes cited, the extremely organized nature of the event. The fact that someone clearly gave them instructions. The fact that the wider community apparently knew something but wasn't talking. The fact that lead masks aren't something you just happen to have, someone made them, or had them made. Against this theory, there's no evidence of a broader organization that had access to these men in that way. The families report no signs of coercion or fear in the days leading up to the event. Both men seemed normal, even calm. Whatever they were walking into it willingly. Theory 6, Government or Military Involvement. Brazil in 1966 was under military dictatorship. The government was actively paranoid about internal threats and was conducting a range of surveillance and intelligence operations. There have been persistent rumors, not hard evidence, but rumors, that the military dictatorship was aware of paranormal research communities in Brazil and either monitored them or, in some cases, used them for their own purposes. The specific suggestion in some retellings is that Manuel and Miguel might have been involved, knowingly or not, in an experiment. A test of some kind. An experiment involving substances, or frequencies, or psychological effects that the government was curious about. I'll say this, stranger things have been true of government experiments in that era. The United States hadn't culture. Brazil's military dictatorship was not operating to a higher ethical standard. Is it possible? In the abstract, yes. Is there evidence? Not really. So what happened after? After the investigation, after the autopsies, after the note was found and the theories were floated? Not much. Which is, in its own way, one of the strangest parts of the story. The case was officially closed. Cause of death, undetermined. No arrests. No charges. No further investigation. The families of Manuel and Miguel received no explanation. No official theory was ever endorsed. In Brazil, the case attracted significant attention in paranormal circles but very little mainstream coverage at the time. In the decades since, it has become something of a legend, discussed in books, in paranormal magazines, eventually on the internet. But it's remained largely unknown outside Brazil and outside UFO and unexplained phenomena communities. The families, as far as anyone knows, never received closure. Imagine that. Your husband, your father, leaves home one Thursday saying he's going to pick up work materials. He never comes back. He's found dead on a hilltop in his best suit, with a handmade lead mask near his face. And the official report says, "We don't know what happened." Case closed. The masks themselves, where are they now? This is actually unclear. They passed through police custody and then into various collections or storage, but their current whereabouts are not publicly confirmed. Given that they are physical evidence in an unsolved death, this is significant. The note. The notebook. These items should theoretically still exist. If they do, and if modern forensic linguistics or handwriting analysis were applied to them, they might tell us something new. Whose handwriting? Was it Manuel's? Miguel's? Someone else's? These questions haven't been answered because, in a fundamental sense, no one with the resources to answer them has tried. The case is cold. The victims are dead. The witnesses are mostly dead. And the Brazilian legal system has had other things to worry about. What's left is the mystery. And the mystery has its own gravity. It pulls at you. Because the thing about the lead masks case is that it isn't just strange, it's coherent. Everything that happened fits together into a pattern. The men went to a specific place at a specific time with specific equipment following specific instructions. Whatever happened to them, it wasn't random. Someone or something pointed these two men at Vintam Hill. And then they died there. And we don't know why. I want to take a few minutes before we close to talk about what this case actually means. Not in terms of the paranormal, or government conspiracies, or any specific theory, but in terms of what it tells us about human beings and belief. Because here's the thing, Manuel and Miguel were not stupid. They were educated, technically skilled men with families who loved them. They had jobs, responsibilities, lives. And they died on a hilltop, wearing suits, following a protocol written in a notebook, waiting for a signal. They believed. They believed so completely, so thoroughly, that they acted on it. They got on a bus. They bought water. They climbed a hill. They took a capsule. They put on the masks. Belief does this to people. Belief, sincere, total, life-organizing belief, makes people do things that look, from the outside, like madness. But from the inside, it looks like the most important thing in the world. I'm not saying that to dismiss them. I'm saying it because I think it's the most important thing about this case. The lead masks are not the mystery. The note is not the mystery. The cause of death is not the mystery. The mystery is, what did these men think they were going to find on that hill? What had they been told? What had they read, or heard, or experienced, that convinced them that this exact plan, this exact day, this exact hill, was worth their lives? And whoever told them that, whoever or whatever planted that conviction in them, that is the real unanswered question. Maybe it was a book. Maybe it was a community of people who fed each other's beliefs until the beliefs became reality. Maybe it was a leader who they trusted completely. Maybe it was something they experienced personally that we can't access or verify. Or maybe, and I genuinely don't know the answer to this, maybe they were right about something. Maybe they touched the edge of something real. Maybe the protocol failed. Maybe they made contact, and it was too much. I don't know. No one knows. And that, in the end, is why we're still talking about it nearly 60 years later. The lead masks case. 2 men. A hilltop. A note that ends mid-sentence, mid-instruction, mid-protocol. Whatever they were waiting for on Vintham Hill in August 1966, they went to their graves without knowing if it came. Or maybe they knew. Maybe in those last moments, before the darkness, they saw exactly what they'd been promised. We'll never know. If you want to go deeper on this case, I'll link some sources in the description. There's very limited English language scholarship, but the Brazilian paranormal literature on this is extensive, and some of it has been translated. If this is your first time on the channel, this is what we do here. The cases nobody talks about. The ones that fell through the cracks. The ones where the strangeness isn't manufactured, it's just what happened. Subscribe if you want more. I'll see you in the next one.